Welcome to the Frog Hop Food Founders interview. I'm delighted to be joined by Monica Martini. She's the founder of B100%, and she is a passionate believer that you are what you eat. Leaving a very different career behind, she spent untold hours researching the nutrition and wellness benefits of ingredients and combinations that can boost our health. The result is the launch of a range of nutritious vegan snacks rooted in ancestral wisdom, but backed by modern evidence-based science. They're low in sugar, they use natural ingredients, unprocessed and anti-inflammatory ingredients, and are produced in ways that ensure they remain optimal for gut, brain, and immune health. What's more, they've already picked up some very prestigious awards, more of which later. So I'm really looking forward to finding out more about B100%. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And you introduced me better than I could have even. In fact, I'm going to copy that for my
I've got it written down. It's fine.
Thank you. I hope I'll be able to share some of my, this journey in launching a food business from a totally non-food business background.
So I guess the first place to start is what were you doing before you founded the business? And had you always secretly wanted to start a food business?
No, never thought in any of my remotest dreams. So I was an architect, practicing architect. I taught at UCL. And so my journey into food really started with learning about nutrition. And that was triggered by my own health problems, and further triggered with losing my in-laws to cancer, both of them, very suddenly and in untimely fashion. So I think that those two triggers were very they made me want to take ownership of my health, because for years I suffered and I wasn't able to really understand why the pills are not helping, because this whole, I was like just what anybody else with, living and trusting the medical system to be providing all the answers. So my whole idea about health was based on the conventional, wisdom out there that you have an ailment, you go to your doctor and you'll get better. But nothing happened. And because I was in a really bad shape, I started studying. Now, I'm not a nutritionist or a scientist, but one way to get good at something is to study that subject in depth. And that's what I did. So I learned about the mechanisms of aging, health span, and all the rest. And then I always loved experimenting, and I did a lot of experiments on myself and creating things in the kitchen, which is probably my architectural trait that helped, wanting to keep experimenting and creating things. And then as I understood nutrition, I also realized that the healthy snacking industry was not really delivering on the health aspect of the foods they were providing. So that was the gap I thought I have to fill. And because I enjoyed the process of making things, it was somehow, a natural progression into starting the business. It wasn't really a business idea to start with, but then as I worked further into it, I realized that, yes, this could work commercially as well. And, there was a unique aspect to what I was doing, which was worth investing time and effort. That's how the real business idea matured. But also, I think I didn't mention earlier that I had started, after I left architecture, I had done an MBA, and I had started an online nonprofit, which was one of the reasons I started losing my health, because it drained me and my finances. So that was the reason that it took me some time before really wanting to do another business. So there was that apprehension and scare. If you failed the first time, how do you come out of that and go into a completely different field?
I'm sure that's something a lot of people can relate to, that that process of kind of going through the business and learning. So it sounds like the mission is about kind of creating healthy snacks that deliver on the health aspect. What's in the range at the moment?
So I think the thing that from a consumer's perspective, I always approached and was very product focused So rather than have a protein bar with 4 different flavors, or a biscuit with 4 different inclusions, I looked at it as saying, okay, what are the products that can be eaten different times of the day, rather than just one element with different flavors. So we have a like a brownie crunch. So as I do, if I am, this is a whole new range from where I started 5 months ago. So we updated and upgraded the whole offering, taking in consideration all the elements that were missed in the first round, the first iteration. So it's got a brownie crunch, which is a biscotti, as well as something that you can have as a bar. Then we have a amaranth, turmeric, and ginger based, like a granola crunch. And then we have broccoli sprout chocolate fudge, which is very different, again, to anything that's out there. And then bringing this whole element of nutrients or ingredients that should be part of the diet, because where I've really focused the business and my products is to take into consideration the longevity diet principles. So there's a whole science of how to increase health span, and there are scientists and there are billionaires investing a ton of money in it right now, and addressing this aspect of how to increase health span and live longer, um, taking into consideration diet and lifestyle factors. So the research and the studying I did was focusing on those elements in nutrition and in terms of nutrients that you should be having every day, or at least part of your staple diet. So what I've done with the products is bring those nutrients into each product, so at a therapeutic level. So if I have the turmeric based granola bar, it has 500 milligrams of turmeric, but it's well incorporated in the recipe, so you don't have that strong sense of eating that high dose, but it's a level that one should have to have any effect on the body. Similarly with broccoli sprouts. Now, broccoli sprouts is a very unusual ingredient, and not many people actually know what they are. So these have been studied for anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory properties, and lots of lab work is happening in this particular food. In the US mostly. Actually, a lot of this is happening in the US in terms of food research. So this is where bringing in elements of nutrients like sulforaphane that really need to be in your diet, but it's not possible unless you're really aware of what to eat every day. So not every consumer is at that level of understanding or aware.
So the products start from a dose of a nutritionally valuable ingredient.
Yes.
And then do you look for different ways to deliver that, or did you have a clear idea? Or
like in terms of the product, or
in terms of developing a product around that dose, if you like?
Yes. So like broccoli is a very dreaded food for most people, right? So how do you bring that in a diet and make it pleasurable? So chocolate is something everybody likes. Now, it's a very weird combination, but the experiments that were done were to try to make sure that you actually are getting it without hating it. Like the flavor was complex and fulfilling all the boxes for a chocolate fudge. So that was the product focused on the taste. Taste was number one and nutrition was number two. So where there's a best balance between the two, which is where hundreds of experiments leading to before you. And my daughter and my husband were the tasters. So they have two very different palates, and they're brutally honest with their feedback. So until they reached the wow, the experiments had to keep going. So because with friends, what you get the friends on board, the problem is they'll never be so honest, because they don't want to say things very harsh or unfriendly. So you can't really trust friends as much on giving honest feedback as you can your own family.
I think every food founder needs some brutally honest people to work with, don't they? So do you have an idea of who you're making these products for? Is there a particular type of person, or is it a general audience? Or?
So I started with having, so my focus was, and the learnings for myself were really from biohackers. So there are people like Dave Asprey and Tim Ferriss and all these, people who are working on optimizing their health and not just being healthy. So there's a big gap between optimizing and just being healthy. So that gap means that you're really focused on getting that top level in nutrients into your body because you're looking at the top level research. So when I look at that, and then as I studied more and learned more about biohackers in general, I also found that most of them were doing really crazy stuff. So which wasn't always the most holistic approach, because one of the things all my studying and understanding nutrition have made me realize that we cannot look at body as separate organs or treat or feed it in silos, nutrition with just protein bars or with just gut bars, or it can't be like that unless you bring a food which addresses the body as a whole. You're not able to really benefit the body in the way it needs because it's working as a system. So a lot of biohacking is about just optimizing your muscles or optimizing, some of them biohackers. But then there's that natural biohackers who are looking at doing it the more integrative way. So I focus that. Now, it's very difficult to really say what's my target market because I want it to be very narrow to start, which every product, that's what is advised, to have a narrow target because then you can market properly. But when I look at my target market, it's like people who are looking at living a holistic lifestyle and looking at very natural products. Now, that could be quite a wide age group. So my challenge has been trying to narrow my age, the demographics of my market. And I'm not sure I'm still 100% on it, but I think the brand voice and the branding, which I'm still working on, should really be able to make me, help me have a much more narrower focus, especially on social media. It's very important because there are certain, uh, you know, demographics that don't go on certain platforms or they don't access certain channels. So that's very important that I narrow my focus, which I'm afraid I'm not currently very narrow. So it's one of those, I think as the product sells, because with this new range, we'll be doing a lot of campaigns. So as it sells, we'll also get a feedback from what consumers we are, addressing need of, and that then will further feed into what campaigns we do and what marketing channels we use.
Yeah. So one of the things is interesting is how well customers or consumers generally understand the sort of health benefits that you're talking about. I mean, I suppose at the moment it isn't a general audience; it's a focused audience on people who do kind of get it. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely true. So if I was to talk about turmeric, or if I was to talk about how the way turmeric needs to be had to be effective, maybe 0.1% of the people would know the science or they understand the subject. So I think that's where, in a way, it's a challenge, but also an opportunity to differentiate, because the health industry is very, very, very. I mean, it's full of hundreds and hundreds of products out there. So how do you stand out and make yourself different? So this is an opportunity, I think, for at least for us as a brand, that we are able to have that narrow perspective on nutrition. But then, while it's also a challenge, because how do you address, there's the early adopters concept, right? The people who try the things because they're always up for the new. product or the new proposition. But then from that early adopters, how do you expand out? So the current marketing strategy that I have right now is get at least 100 um, love your product, and then venture out from there and word of mouth, and make sure that we are talking about a product in as much transparency and educating the audience, because there's also that element, because there's some nutritionists out there who are educating online through Instagram live videos, etc., but they don't make the product. So they're asking the consumer to go and fetch that product that they are advocating. So it's also partnering with the healthcare industry, which will help us reach that audience and create that awareness even more of why they should be eating our products vis-a-vis.
Yeah. I mean, you said you're, I think, 5 months from launch, or 5 months past your launch.
Yes.
Can I ask about your approach to sales and where you're selling at the moment?
So online, so initially we started at Nopex. So that was the launch. So this is where my strategy was all wrong to start with. So I thought that the best way to go about sales is to go through all these wholesalers and the retailers. So chase the retailers, and as I talked to you earlier, it's absolutely the opposite of what I should have done. So I should have built my brand and the brand equity, as it were, and really had a following to start with. Because at the moment, I did not invest at all on SEO or on social media. So these are the two channels where your brand is made of, it gets eyeballs. So none of that. So, and I went directly to retail or to these, wholesale, where you have no scope of negotiation, and they want to be they're as risk averse as it can be when looking at new brands which have no customer base to start with. So we went back to the design board and redid the whole thing to lower the packaging as well as the product that we are coming out with, because the original product range was expensive, very difficult to produce, so a lot of labor. So now it's again, instead of having my 5 months to already have sales and sales channels established, I had to go back to the design board, redo the business in 5 months, and now I'm going to start the sales. So although it's still online, I haven't really been able to get to the next step. So a shout out to Marcus, who said that go to your local shops, just say sale or return, see what happens, and then you go from there. And so that's what we are going to do now, rather than have rather than chase retailers or wholesalers. We are just going to do that in terms of sales. So website and local stores, markets.
What I'm hearing is that you're kind of comfortable with changing direction, adapting your strategy, and learning as you go. I think that's really important. One thing I've noticed, you've picked up some pretty good awards already. There's the Great Taste Awards, the Nourish Awards as well. And can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So when I was doing the market research, one of the things that stuck with looking at other brands was how much they advertised the awards they had got. So early on, I knew that awards should be one of the important strategies to follow from a consumer credibility, especially. Because, when I see something with a great taste or any other word, it sort of makes me think, oh yeah, this must be good. So that was one of the starting points. And the whole process was really, you have to see what's the deadline to apply and just apply. Now, they are very expensive, actually, if you start putting all of them together. They're about, the Great Taste, of course, is you have to choose the more prestigious ones. So Nourish and Great Taste seem to have a much better setup But then there are others like Vegan Awards, Wellness Magazine Awards, and different magazines do their own awards. Um, so that, I think, as you so budget was always an issue. So I had to choose which awards would be more relevant. And because we are a nutrition brand, it was important to get that validation from Nourish, for example. And Great Taste was a great satisfaction, because you're competing with brands who are putting sugar and butter and all kinds of other things. So it's not really a health product. But then to get the taste, Great Taste Awards, in this category was also very important, because that means we were standing out on taste, not just the nutrition. Um, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's feels good, because I mean, if anybody out there who's wanting to apply, I would say to choose which awards, because if you have limited budget, it's like about £150, I think, per application, and then you have a discount if you apply for more things, like more categories. So you have to really choose. I mean, I had to choose it. Whichever ones we applied, we won all of them. One in the sense that gold awards, as well as highly recommended, or from Women's Fitness magazine. So yeah, it's an interesting way to go about, but I have to also use that exposure, which, because I went back into product development, I could not really benefit, because I should have written and contacted all the judges and done all the testimonials on the website, which are still missing. So all of that, I mean, it's one person band, so there's that slow progress in making use of every element.
Was it a difficult decision to quit your job in architecture and start doing this?
No, so I think I'm so glad I'm doing this, because I'm loving what I'm doing. Had it I mean, it was like karma. It's like the destiny, how things work out in your life, and they take a certain turn, and lead you somewhere else from where you started. So I wasn't afraid of changing from the very start, because even when I started architecture, it was a, the only architect in like 5 generations of the family. So there's always that element of being against the grain, especially in India at the time, and then leaving India on my own without any. So the challenge and the change was never a problem. But I'm glad my first business failed, because I would have never got on to. I mean, it failed. It left me broke, and my family broke. But in the end, well, I'm saying this, but I hope this one doesn't fail, so I make up for all the losses from the first one. But I'm doing something I'm very, very passionate about. And I think there's so much to deliver on it. I'm just getting started, and I can already see where it can go from, done properly with the right resources. And of course, big thing is investment. So it's a catch 22. Unless you have something valuable, nobody's going to invest. So it's about creating that value to that point where somebody can trust that, yes, this brand has staying power. So that's where now product focus is finished. It's selling focus and commercial focus.
Do you remember how you found Frog Hop and you started working with us?
Yes. So so at the stage where I was before the packaging and everything had taken off, so I searched online for food consulting businesses. So Frog Hop came up, and then I looked at your website, and I was massively impressed with Melanie's work and her videos that you have on the website. So I set up a 1 hour consultancy with her. And then we had a good chat, and that followed on from when I started working with Sally on the nutritional claims and health claims. So yeah, I mean, I'm so glad, because it was a very important aspect, especially when you're, you know, um, the whole idea about the differentiation factor is based on nutrition. Unless I make sure I have that clear, I can't be called out on that aspect of the business. So, and it's the core of the business. So it was very important that I got that help from you guys, to, and also what can go on the packaging. I think that was a big deal, to get the packaging text right and not get into any legal hot water.
I guess the next question for me is what are the kind of key things if you could go back to the start of the business or 6 months ago or whatever, what are the key things you've learned that you'd tell yourself?
One would be to forget about retailers when you launch. Just build brand equity, brand following, brand loyalty, whatever it takes. I mean, in my case, of course, everything I want to do, I have to buy a book and learn it. So right now I'm learning Instagram. So, and my justification to buy 5 books on that is that if I had a consultant or a PR company, it would cost me hundreds of pounds more. So, so books are one way to get that. So definitely, I would not want to go the route that I did in the beginning and feel demoralized. The second would be to learn skills, because that's something nobody can take away from you, and they'll always be there. When you grow the brand, you'll always know what to do and tell others what you need done, because you've learned the skill, like learning email marketing software, learning how to set up a website, learning how to, even photography, how to go into, find stock photos without paying. So all these things would help later on, even though my progress is slow, but these skills that I'm picking up by learning on the go.
Brilliant. I was thinking you've got a lot of hats to wear as a food founder and a
Yes.
business owner.
Yes.
We've got a question in the chat from Helen Johnston. She says, thanks so much for a great chat. Did you already have the recipes worked out when you approached Frog Hop, or did they help you do that aspect?
No, I had the recipes worked out. So they helped me with the nutritional claims and the health claims, the headline health claims that should go with the.
It's about making sure that the claims are legal and can be substantiated, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that definitely.
Brilliant. How long did it take you to create the desired product? That's from Danielle Blackwell.
Yes, so on an average, I would say 4 to 5 months. Reason being that you also want to get it tested. For example, one of the big challenges I had was the water activity in the product. Now that's very important for shelf life. So having a shelf life of 6 months is what retailers want. Although, as Marcus Carter said, that's only because they want to de-risk, the stock, the storage, and all that. But actually, your product should be good to go. If it's running off the shelves quickly, 2 months should be good enough. So, but what I needed to do was to get that worked out, which meant that 0.6 is the cutoff point from which the pathogens can start developing, so on water activity. So that was one of the things that that product, which is my nutty raw cacao, we have raw yacon syrup in it, and that has a water activity which sort of brings the whole product into a much higher end water activity. And I had to do about, I don't know, from the top of my head, probably 45, 50 experiments to see how to bring the water activity down and increase the other, it's about balancing it out without losing the flavor that you want. And so then having it tested by precision labs of somebody else who would tell you, okay, this has reached a point of 6 months, 5 months, 4 months when they do their tests. So this is a process that can take even 6 months. They do an accelerated testing. So they won't take 6 months sitting, but they do some process by accelerating it.
Excellent. Nina asks, did you work the recipes out at home, or did you use a food lab, and did you use food scientists?
So I had the privilege of having the garage in the house that we converted to Hygiene 5 rating. So that was a very important part, of keeping the business viable for us, because I couldn't have afforded a kitchen. I mean, they are expensive, but also the whole process of, you can't rent a kitchen to do an experiment and then and lose a lot of money by going back and forth. So having the separate kitchen with a professional rating was very important, because it sort of makes sure that we don't have that extra margin to add on top of the product pricing. And secondly, the fact that you can iterate as much as you want, because there's no time limit. So that's the other thing I would say, that unless you give yourself a deadline, like, with the webinar, I had the deadline that the website has to be back on. And and I was like so paranoid that we won't finish. But so deadlines for entrepreneurs are so important, because time management goes out the window. And I could be sitting there still working on the experiments and still working on making more product, refining it further. But you have to cut a line and draw a line and say, this is it. It's done, moving on. So somebody has to, prod you to move along.
Yes, absolutely.
And,
Speaking of which, we have run over, but it's all good stuff. Saskia says, it's a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. How can I get in touch with you, as I would love to taste your products and have a chat if you're up for it? So yes, if you want to know more about B100%, you can find out at b100%.com. It is very freshly made website, and it is very beautiful, and all those awards are on there. If you want to know more about the kind of webinars that Monica was talking about food and drink, then go to froghop.co.uk/resources. And you can also listen to the previous Food Founders interviews at froghop.co.uk/podcast, or, as they say, by searching for Food Founders interviews wherever you get your podcasts. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Monica, for joining us. Really, really fascinating to hear your journey, your adaptations, your learning, your approach. I wish you every success. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to help anyone who wants to pick on my brains for things not to do.
So thanks for joining us. We'll be back in the new year. You can sign up for the next session at froghop.co.uk/kitchen. Thanks for joining.